It's Drybear. Back again with another Baldur's Gate 3 build guide, and today we'll be going through my Bonegrinder build. This is an extremely high damage fighter barbarian build that's a great fit for characters like Lae'zel or Karlach, and excels at both taking damage and dishing out massive critical strikes with two-handed weapons. But first, you should come hang out with me on my live stream. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/Drybear. If you don't come hang out with me and the community on Twitch, the next time you take a long rest, there won't be any cutscenes waiting for you at camp. What I love about this build is it's very easy to get online. If you get the Everburn Blade in the prologue, you can have this build active almost right away. And there's definitely several different ways that you can build it that all benefit extremely well. But the core of it is focusing on massive critical strike damages. There are a lot of options in the game that allow you to reduce the number required to roll a critical strike on, and all of these stack together, and you can get many of them to the point where almost every hit is a critical and you're doing massive amounts of damage. Now you can take a screenshot, or down below in the description and in the comments, I will have a link to the one sheets, the build sheets that you can use to make your character. And this allows you to go through all the progression in the game. And what's great about this is Fighter does have an extra feat built into their system that you can get online very early on, and you can also get the bonus crit improved critical that comes from Barbarian as well. And you put both those together, plus great weapon fighting, plus Savage Attacker, plus the double hit that hits extra on top of that, and Champion, Action Surge, and Rage and Reckless Attack. You start getting insanely ridiculously strong to the point where you can probably just run 3 support characters and the Bonegrinder, and the Bonegrinder will just go through and kill every opponent that you have in your encounters. Your primary stats are going to be strength, primarily for damage and output of durability, but you also have it for, useful things like moving things, jumping distance, acrobatics, all super useful. Constitution will benefit you as well, and the total spread that I recommend starting with here is 17 strength, 14 dex, 16 constitution, 8 int, 8 whiz, and 10 charisma. If you really don't like having negatives on any of your stats, you can pull some stats out of dexterity and put that into int and wisdom, or have a little bit out of constitution. But in general, I like having the dexterity for the extra armor class and constitution for con saving throws and extra HP as well. And the goal is to end with 8 fighter, 4 barbarian. You want to have those two, that split there. And there's 2 different ways you can build this. I recommend going fighter, but you can also go barbarian. You can take barbarian all the way up to 5 just to get the extra attack, then keep leveling up, and until you get to a point, maybe level 9 or 10, you can respec, do fighter 8, and then do barbarian 3, and then you can start working from it from that perspective if you really want to do the barbarian from the beginning. But I think fighter has so many awesome benefits that go along with this that's really going to benefit you in the total experience of the game, but you could do it in either direction if you really wanted to. Fighting style at level 1 fighter, you want to go great weapon fighting. This gives you a nice advantage when you're using big two-handed weapons. You also want to pick up the Everburn Blade, which is the flaming greatsword in the prologue. All you have to do is pick up Shadowheart, swap out her spellbook for command, and then just use command drop on the commander, the devil commander that's on the ship. He'll drop the weapon, pick it up, continue out of the prologue, and you got yourself a nice weapon, which is honestly, Everburn Blade is the best weapon you can get for the first half of the game. It lasts a long time before you really start getting better weapons that can replace it, aside from being able to dip it in other things besides fire. Second Wind is great. Fighter 2, you go in and you'll get Action Surge. Fighter 3, I recommend subclass Champion here. Champion has the passive that gives you improved critical hit. This means that your crit strikes require 1 less on the roll to be a critical strike before it adds the extra scalar on that damage output. We'll also get things later that make it so you can add double rolls on your critical strikes. And then we can also stack improved critical hit from multiple sources. That means that instead of a high roll, it could be a medium roll. You can get down to like maybe even critting on 13s and 12s, depending on the elixirs that you use and the gear that you're wearing. Fighter 4 gives us an ability score improvement. And in this case, I think you want to get strength +2. That takes you strength from 17 to 19. And the reason I like doing this is because around this time in Act 1, you can do the Hag Lair. And if you, minor spoiler here, if you allow her to live, she'll throw you a chunk of her hair, which allows you to add 1 to any stat. And you can add that to strength. And then in the very early part of the game, you can have 20 strength off the bat with great weapon fighting and improved critical hit and a very good two-hander to the point where you're just going to be soloing everything that's in your path. We keep going with fighter until 5 to get extra attack, and then fighter again to 6 because they get a feat at 6 that allows them to pick up great weapon master. This is going to lower your accuracy but raise your damage significantly. However, we can offset this with buffs that give you advantage. So if they're blinded, if they're entangled, if they're frightened, things like that. But also, if you go straight into multi-classing Barbarian, which we will do at level 7, we pick up Barbarian 1, we get Rage, and then Barbarian 2 gives us Reckless Attack. And Reckless Attack gives us advantage on all our hits if we use it every turn, and I recommend that you do. So now we have this lowered accuracy from Great Weapon Master with increase in damage, but we get advantage from Reckless Attack, and we have damage reduction from Rage, which means we can start just cleaving everything in our path. Keep going through Barbarian and pick up subclass Berserker, which will give us Frenzy. Works great with the champion setup. And then Barbarian 4, we want to pick up Savage Attacker, which gives us an extra roll on damage. And then you want to finish out Fighter 7 and 8. And for the last ASI, I think you can pick up either your Dex +1, Con +1 to finish that off, or you can put +2 into Con or Dex, depending on what gear you have. It's very easy to get Dex and Con from gear throughout the story, so you can actually put those up depending on where you are and what your gear is, or you can run Tough or Resilient. I love running Resilient on Constitution throws just to give you the extra point and give you advantage on those, which helps a lot with some of the charming effects and domination effects that happen toward the middle to late stage of the game. Moving on to gameplay, and again, I like doing this in the camp so it doesn't show any spoilers. I'm not killing any characters in the game or anything like that. I'm just in the camp hanging out here, and I want to show you some of the basics of this build. Understanding how to play this build is very straightforward and very easy. You just hit things as hard as you possibly can, and you keep doing it over and over. You will have things like Second Wind, which is useful for healing your character as a bonus action, which is super nice. Use that just as much as you can per short rest. And then Action Surge is also available, and you get an extra action here. And I like using this earlier on in the fight. You can actually go up to a dangerous enemy that's in your way and just take them, like hit them again with extra attack, Action Surge, hit them again on extra attack. And you can actually start going for some of the tankier, more dangerous enemies at the very beginning of the fight and just completely erase them before they even get a turn, just because you're dealing so much ridiculous damage. You want to take advantage of some of the bonuses, bonus abilities you get on the two-handed weapons that come along in the story. Cleave is a great one. You'll get this from most swords and axes that you pick up, though some of them have unique abilities. There's a great sword in Act 2 that has a line attack, which is insanely strong. And instead of cleave being like this wide and only hitting 3 targets, it's a big line attack that goes from where Lae'zel is now to like right out here by the pot. It's a very large line attack, and you can hit many, many targets with it, which is super cool. So you have that there. Once you finally have Barbarian active, I recommend using Reckless Attack every turn. What this does is that you have advantage on your attack rolls, but enemies have advantage against you. But once you have Frenzy/Rage, you will have the defense as well. And there's actually some gear options that you can benefit from having low HP as well. So if they hit you, but you hit them, it's super nice. The other thing that I want to point out to you as well is under passives is where you will find your Great Weapon Master, and any of these feats that lower your chance to hit, your proficiency goes down, but your attack damage goes up. You always want to be aware that this is a toggleable passive. It's the same for Sharpshooter, Great Weapon Master, all of those that have this effect. You can toggle it on and off. So if you run into an enemy that has extremely high AC armor class, which means you have a very low chance to hit, what you can do is you can just go to passives, turn off your Great Weapon Master, and then you kind of attack normally, get that big bonus. And then when you know facing a normal enemy, or like say you go up to an enemy that has like 31 armor class, for example, and you have a 6% chance to hit, just go over your passives, take off your Great Weapon Master, then take that 6%, turn it into like a 30 or 40 chance to roll and hit, and then that you're good to go. You also want to be taking advantage of consumables with this build, especially since you're not going to be using your bonus action as much as say other builds might. Use that to drink potions, drink bonuses, and use this up as well, because there's a lot of great elixirs in Baldur's Gate 3 that benefit builds like this. things like Elixir of Bloodlust. You can also get things like Elixir of the Colossus. And there's also an elixir that has improved critical on it, which means that until next long rest, the number required for you to land a critical strike is reduced by 1, and it stacks with everything else that has this effect. So you can very easily have an elixir that reduces that number by an additional count. Now we're going to dive into gear, and I'm going to give you a list of all the best gear for this build and where to find it. So if you're looking, this is going to be some minor spoilers in text. I'm going to give you text without images and no cutscenes, so there's no spoilers, hopefully, but it will tell you where you need to go to get this item and potentially what choice you may need to make in that situation, which could be a spoiler for you. So this is going to be a full gear progression for this build. Now I'm going to go through these as we always do in chronological order based on the story. So you can go up to the point that you're caught up to in the story, and then you can wait, or if you really want to know where these are, you can pick them up. The one thing that you really want to know about with this build is anytime you run a Rage Barbarian, either as a primary class or as a multi-class, anytime you're raging, you will lose effects if you are wearing heavy armor. So even though fighter and champion can use heavy armor, you will be limited to using medium armor or less with this build because we will be raging once we have Barbarian online, so keep that in mind. The first item you want to pick up immediately in the prologue is the Everburn Blade on the Nautiloid ship. So if you go to the Devil Commander and either kill him, or if you're on Tactician, it's more efficient to just pick up command, use command drop on him, pick up the weapon when he drops it, and then you can dip out of there if you don't really want the achievement or any of that. But this is, again, one of the best weapons for two-handed that you can get in the game, and it lasts all the way through the mid to late part of Act 2 when you start getting better options. The only downside with this weapon is that it can't be dipped because it has permanent fire on it, but for the most part, almost everything is weak to fire or can deal with fire, except for some specific situations. So this weapon is insanely good. The base damage on it is incredibly high. It is 2 to 12 or 2d6, which is super nice, and you get a lot of extra damage on that, and it'll carry you through most of the game. Alternate options is the Blooded Great Axe. This is a two-handed axe that you can pick up from Roa Moonglow. Roa Moonglow is a halfling that you'll find in the Shattered Sanctum in the Goblin Camp in Act 1, and it has a very high base damage, and when you are low on HP, you deal an additional slashing damage, and it hits pretty dang hard too. Keep in mind that if you do kill Roa Moonglade in Act 1 in the Shattered Sanctum, she won't be available as a vendor in Act 2, and so you'll miss out on some items, but for this build, it won't matter, so you can skip right over that. You can also get Jorgrel's Great Sword from Grimforge by killing the Corsair Greymon, either when you first enter or later on. This has a nice 2 to 16 slashing. It has a weapon enchantment on it, which does make it better than the Everburn Blade, and it grants the line attack that I was talking about earlier, which has more reach and can hit more than 3 targets, which is really nice. For the ranged weapons, you do also want to get this from Corsair Greymon, Bow of the Banshee. And what this does is it gives you bonus to attack and damage against frightened creatures, and this bonus seems to apply to your melee hits, even though you have the bow in your ranged slot. So this can be super useful, and in many cases, you may be just outside of range for a melee hit and you have no movement left, so being able to shoot with your bow is super useful. So I love getting Bow of the Banshee on fighter or melee builds just to kind of get that extra little bit of damage on it. From Thud, which is one of the dwarves, the Dwergars in Grimforge, you can get the Cap of Wrath. During combat, when the wearer starts their turn with 50% HP or less, they gain Wrath, which improves your melee strikes for 2 turns, even more damage. And then for the armor, I recommend using the Ancient Forge, go down into the Ancient Forge, and then craft the medium armor, which is the Scale Mail, not the Splint Mail, but the Scale Mail, and you craft it either during the Grim fight or afterwards. And this one's awesome because it has 16 AC. It's medium armor, so it won't block your rage. It reduces all incoming damage by 1. You can apply reeling to targets that hit you, and attackers can't land crits on you, which makes you super tanky going into Act 2. Gloves of the Growling Underdog come from Shattered Sanctum. I love getting these. They're right behind Dro Ragzlin in his vault. And what this does is that when you're surrounded by 2 or more enemies, you have advantage on all melee attacks. And this is great if you're not yet Barbarian and you don't have Reckless Attack yet. You can get advantage on melee if there's 2 or more enemies nearby, and increase your strength saving throws by 1, which is super cool. The Swiresea shoes from the Shattered Sanctum on the trader outside in the Goblin Camp. Super nice. You'll use these for the most part, most of the first half of the game. This gives you a jump distance increase by 1.5 meters and acrobatics +1 on top of your high strength score, means that you can just yeet yourself on a single jump without having improved jump all the way across the room and land on top of someone. It makes you very, very mobile from that perspective. From the Owlbear Cave, I like getting the Moondrop Pendant from the Gilded Chest. This is the magic chest. To open this, you have to use knock or read the Selune prayer in front of the chest to open it. And when you get it, it says when you have 50% HP or less, you no longer provoke opportunity attacks. So basically, if you're half HP or lower, you permanently have disengage on your character and you can move around without getting hit, which is super nice. In the Goblin Camp, kill Crusher and you can pick up the Crusher's Ring. This gives you movement speed +3. The Caustic Band is one of the best early game Act 1 weapons to get if you're doing any weapon attacks at all, ranged or melee, it doesn't matter. This adds 2 acid damage to every single weapon attack, and this number adds up so fast because you'll just constantly be doing 2 more on every single hit. And I recommend this for any weapon build in general. It's just so good. You get this from Dareth, the dwarf vendor inside of the Myconid colony in the Underdark. Pick this up. It is an easy buy. For Act 2, there isn't a crazy amount of items that are specifically for this build, but there are some good ones to pick up. First is the Cloak of Protection from Quartermaster Tali. You can get this either at the Last Light Inn or if she dies at Moonlight Towers or Moonrise Towers, you can take it from her. This gives armor class +1 and saving throws +1. Best cloak you can pick up. It's super cheap. Always get it. It's very good for every single build in the game. You can also get the 1T scale mail, especially if you didn't craft the adamantine armor. This is medium armor again, but it also allows you to add your dex modifier to your armor class. This armor does not impose disadvantage on ability checks, and you gain +1 bonus to initiative, which gives you that early turn. And it's great for builds like this that can one-shot or two-shot enemies. If you get high initiative, you can just start taking enemies out before they even get a turn, which makes a big difference. You can also go to the Githyanki Creche and go to the Quartermaster and pick up the Gloves of Dexterity. This will increase your dexterity to 18 and grants you attack +1. So what you can do is, especially if you used your dexterity points elsewhere, you can get the 1T scale mail from Last Light Inn, and you can also go to the Creche and increase the wearer's dexterity. So you can just set your, respec your dexterity down to 8, wear these gloves for the rest of the game, and then put those points elsewhere, and you have high dexterity. That dexterity modifier is going to be added to your armor class, and you get attack, which makes it super strong. The Dark Justiciar Gauntlets is another option for you. It adds an additional 1-4 necrotic to your weapon attacks on top of the Caustic Band, adding 2 acid. So it gives you a bunch of damage there, and strength saving throws as well. I also like the Periopt of Wound Closure from Lady Esther, the vendor on the Mountain Pass. When you pick this up, Wound Closure means that when you're downed, the next turn you automatically stabilize. It's almost like you instantly pass 3 death saving throws and you're stabilized until someone gets you. Super nice. You can get this and now we don't have to worry about saving throws. You can leave that person there. You can pick them up when you need to, which is super cool. It also gives you potent healing, which it maximizes the number of hit points restored when you restore HP. It just makes you super tanky, especially when you're going to be taking a lot of damage on the front line. Then in the Temple of Shar self-same trial, Killer Sweetheart is a ring that drops after you kill the last image in the self-same trial, and it gives you Executioner, which is once per long rest. When you kill a creature, you have an option as a reaction for your next attack roll to be a guaranteed critical hit. It'll pop up as a reaction, and you can choose to use it or not. But I love this with big builds, big one-shot builds, like Ranger builds, like Ranger builds, Thief builds, Assassin builds, or these big Bonegrinder builds, because then you can just say, oh, there's a big enemy here. I'm going to walk up, use my Executioner charge, and I'm going to just one-shot them, take them out, and start working on other enemies. Super nice to have in that state. Lastly, there's a bunch of options for you in Act 3 once you get there with this build. You want to focus on getting weapons early. There's a lot of awesome, very strong weapons that you can pick up from various different quests in the game that can really skyrocket the damage output of your character. The first one is the Balduran's Giant Slayer. This is a legendary two-handed greatsword that you find inside the Wormrock prison in Worm's Way. I have a video on this one as well if you want to go check that out, but you have to go down and kill the undead dragon to pick this weapon up. It's a 2d6 +2 slashing weapon enchantment +3, and you double the damage from your strength mod when you hit, which means it is insanely high damage. You'll start doing disgusting damage output. It also grants you advantage on attack rolls against large, huge, or gargantuan creatures. You can increase your size, increasing your weapon damage. You can gain temporary HP and advantage on strength checks and saving throws. This thing is a monster. You can also get the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane, which is the famed Silver Sword of the Githyanki. You get this for saving Orpheus and siding with Voss, Githrak Voss. And you can pick this up, and you can. This one is a 2 to 12 or 2d6 plus 8 slashing. It gives psychic damage, and if you are a Gith wearing it, you can get the additional psychic damage on top. But keep in mind, any weapon or gear piece in the game that says that when it detects the wielder is a specific race, you can always just shapeshift or disguise yourself as that race, and you'll still get the benefit. So if it says you have to be a dwarf or a deep gnome, or you have to be Githyanki, or you have to be tiefling, whatever it is, you can just use disguise, or you can use a shapeshift, turn into that race, and you'll get the benefit. Just remember that you have to be in that form. You have to take the weapon off, put the weapon back on when you're in the form, and you'll get the bonus. So another option there. The Sword of Chaos is also a very easy option because you do this for the story anyways. This is in the Ballast Crypt on the Murder Tribunal. It's in Saravok. You have to just kind of kill him, get his sword. It's a nice 2d6 plus 1 with weapon enchantment plus 2. Very easy, and it heals you as well, which is good. In the lower city, if you go to Fitz the Firecracker, you can buy the Dead Shot, which is a nice bow. This one has improved critical on it. Another source for us to get this. It reduces the number you need to roll a critical hit by 1, and it stacks with the other ones even if you're not using it as your main weapon. And it doubles your proficiency bonus when rolling ranged attacks with this weapon unless they have a disadvantage. So if you have to use ranged attacks, having the Dead Shot for this build is super nice. The Saravok's Horned Helmet that you get from Saravok is super easy to pick up, and this one has another improved critical on it, so it's even lower chance or lower requirement to get your critical strike. It gives you Constitution saving throws, and you can't be frightened, which is really cool. The Flame Enameled Armor you get from the Warden's Vault in Worm's Rock Fortress, and this one gives you +2 to initiative. You have resistance to fire and +2 to bonus to saving throws, and it gives you warm, which is super nice. Very easy to pick this up, and it's a good pickup as well. The Craterfish Gloves in the Murder Tribunal gives you a, when you score a critical hit, deal an additional force damage and give you strength saving throws +1. We're going to be critting a lot. This is going to trigger a lot. You can also get the Legacy of the Masters from Damon if you kept him alive through to Act 3 in the lower city. This one gives you a +2 attack and damage rolls with weapons, plus another strength saving throw +1. And you can also get Amulet of Ball, which gives you on targets when they're full HP, when you hit them, you cause a bleed, which can give you even more damage, which is super nice. And then the Hell Dust boost from Gortash's chest behind where he is up in his office. You can pick these up. It means you can't be forcibly moved by foes or spells or actions, and you ignore the effects of difficult terrain. You can also teleport, deal fire damage, which gives you another way to move around. Super strong. And if you fail a saving throw for any reason, you get the chance to succeed instead. I think it's per short rest on that one. So these are the gear options that I would recommend for this build. Super strong. I think every party should have one of these. It is so reliable, especially when you have high HP targets on Tactician. You can burn them down. You can also kill a whole bunch of ads very easily. It is just a rampaging monster that goes around killing everything in its sight. And that's the Bonegrinder build for Baldur's Gate 3. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below. Leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people. And I'll see you on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content. Link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.